All right. Well, welcome back to the Purple Cloud podcast. Here we have today two titans of the translation world. We have Alan Saw and Michael Brown coming in to talk about their new translation of Jutong, so Wen Bing Tiao Bian. Welcome, Alan, and welcome, Michael. That's the
Thanks for
one.
having me.
Yeah, and
Hello, Daniel.
this hello, and this is your. How many books have you done together now?
Technically,
Uh,
six translations and
Six.
editing, but we also did editing for Will's book, which is not a translation, but more like a
Mm,
historical analysis.
yeah.
We've also got a psalm text coming out. Hopefully, I've got to do the editing on that, which will be maybe like another month or two. And then part two of the Wen Bing, right? Which will take us up to
It's-
eight.
Yeah,
yeah.
wow. Well, that's really amazing work, and I imagine you've got systems worked out now, and the the whole process is maybe a little bit smoother than when you first started.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Like,
I, I,
yeah.
Looking back at our first work, I think, which was the first volume of explanations of channels, which I actually have here as well. Just that this was the first one that was ever printed, the not for resale and everything like that, back in 2019. I think, we tried to, we kind of had like the first idea of our system of how we would work with that. And we've kind of just evolved it and refined it with each book, I think, right, Alan?
Mhm. Yeah. I think at the beginning we were very inspired by the translation of Nigel Weissman and also
Mm,
Anschutz. So we try to be as neutral, as literal as possible. And also, I think we did attempt to preserve the original grammar structure because we're crazy and unrealistic.
Mm.
But
Mm.
then we learned through hard lessons is that's not feasible. But still, we kind of were struggling to figure out how to deal with that. So I think eventually we evolved to become slightly more liberal in a sense for
mm,
the sake of effective communication. Because if you are way too liberal, sometimes um, sometimes there's a pitfall. Basically, uh, communication aside, issue aside, uh, the issue is that sometimes when we do literal translation, we don't really understand what the argument is ourselves either. Because literal translation is really easy to do. You look at the grammar, throw in the terms, and just assume that's it. But
mm,
uh, but sometimes we miss the bigger pictures, and
mm,
so I think so nowadays. From my point, I kind of like to do something more more like a contextual translation.
mm,
So basically, when it's like talking about argument, reference, like, and also what's the underlying belief system, underlying assumption of the author. So I try to look at it through that lens. And sometimes I agree, sometimes I really disagree, and sometimes I even see deliberate tempering by the original author.
mm,
Can you
So
say that again?
for
Sorry, deliberate what? Sorry.
tempering.
Oh, tampering. Okay,
So
gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
For example, like Wu Jutong in this Wen Bing Tiao Bian, systematic differentiation of worm diseases. So it's really he really famously used Gui Zhitang, the cinnamon twig decoction, as the first formula because he's a paying respect to Zhang Zongjin, and also
mm,
since the whole work is modeled after the Shang Han Lun, but he tempered the text. So basically, in Shang Han Lun, there's a line that talks about what is the worm disease, right? He
mm,
added one more line to the end of the quote. He said, in this case, 贵之汤 governs, which is
mm,
not in the original quote.
mm,
So he deliberately temper with that. So later on, a lot of people pointed out. So basically, I think this is something. If we just kind of stick with like literal translation, we tend to develop this sort of tunnel vision that we
mm,
don't really see outside of that scope,
mm.
and then we just miss that.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just
Mm.
curious how you had the chance to find this work, introduce this work, why you decided to why you decided to pick this work as your next translation, because there's a tremendous amount of work that's obviously gone into it. And yeah, I think it seems like more than the Zhang Jingyue translations to me. So yeah, let me know why you guys wanted to pick this work.
Uh,
I'll let you
so
go.
yeah, I think I chose this work because one so there are multiple reasons. So if you look at into the people usually break down into the herbal lineage into what they call as the seven great herbal schools.
Mm,
So so some of them are already translated, like the Spring Earth. We have Li Dongyuan translated, Zhu Danxi. So Zhu Danxi kind of have an overlap between Zhu Danxi and also Liu Wansu lineage. So Liu Wansu is cold and cooling school. Zhu Danxi is a nourishing school. And then Zhang Jingyue, we already put out three works, which I feel like it's enough.
They're
And
the
Shang
warm
Han Lun, we have
supplementing
so
school, right?
hmm?
Zhang Jinyu is the warm supplementing school.
Yeah, Zhang Jingyue is a warming supplementary school, and also we have a lot of code image, like Shang Han Lun school out there
mm,
already, and just feel like the biggest missing piece in that puzzle is the worm diseases,
I'd agree.
because we do have quite a bit of people writing clinical manual, and also we are tested on that nationally, with Wen Bing theory, like the four levels,
Mm,
and also going from the top to the bottom, the three burners. But some of the source text is missing, so for me, it's like, okay, it's one of the most prominent school being practiced right now in Taiwan, and part of China. And so for me, it makes no sense why this text hasn't been translated.
mm,
So I think that's a first motivation. And second motivation was uh, so I think a lot of uh, so I think I just kind of want to present almost like a counterpoint to the modern Shang Han Lun theory, because personally I'm a Shang Han Lun Jingfang practitioner. But at the same time, when I look into Wen Bing theory or the Wen Bing framework, I actually don't feel like it's not different from the Shang Han Lun theory. It's basically, and also it constructed this entire uh, practical framework for you to utilize in clinic. So I just feel like as educators, I think one of the most important things we need to provide to a student is that you need to be able to give them a framework, a robust framework for them to rely on, whether for their practice or for their study. And later on, you can fill in blank later. And I just feel like the Wen Bing one is missing. And also one thing I do want to point out in the Wen Bing Tiao Bian is that it's not only about worm diseases, uh,
mm,
as it as Wu Jutong states very clearly inside of the work over and over, that he feels like a lot of written literature has been all about wind code. But how about the other four? How about dampness? How about heat? How about summer heat? How about dryness? Where are they? And so actually, if we look into the work of Wen Bing Tiao Bian, the chapters are arranged in a very interesting way. So first you have the windworms, warm heat, but you also have summer heat disease. You have dryness disease. You even have cold damp disease and damp heat disease. So so for me, when I first read it, actually I just pretty much skip all the chapter, just look into a cold damp section.
mm,
And it was really helpful for my personal practice, and actually found a formula that actually matched with what I've been prescribing to the patient ever since the time of COVID, uh, which is
mm,
小半价汤 with the addition of hobo and shinren. So I just found the insights. I was like, oh my God, we are using the same formula. So that's
mm,
for me, that's really cool. And also it just kind of enhanced. Basically, I feel like it's quite practical, and also it fills out some of the missing spaces for the Jinfang tradition, because uh, I do have a feeling that if you take a lot of Jinfang formula, you can fit in the construct
mm.
provided by the Wen Bing Tiao Bian. So you instead of going to the windworms or warm heat section, you can actually put it into the wind code section. itself
Mm.
gives you very similar framework. So I think that's two of the main reasons why I wanted to present that work, and so I think it's uh, for the prominence place in Chinese herbal literature, because it's one of the four greatest work ever written in the Chinese herbal literature,
Mm.
and the other one is like practicality. Like a lot of time I want to translate books, but they are not practical books. They are just
Yeah.
like books I find very interesting, uh, but maybe the concept has become obsolete and it's no longer applicable in a clinic. Then
Mm.
in that case, why bother?
Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed there's a lot in there you talking about, but there's like you said, like he introduces the Jutong to sort of, show his homage to the Shang Han
Mhm.
and all of that. But then, later on I noticed, again, I've not sat with it as long as you guys, obviously, but I saw quite a bit of talk about inappropriate uses of sweating and how that'll affect dampness
Mhm.
and this kind of thing, and saying people are always diagnosing everything as cold disease and they're wrong and they're wrong. It seems to come up quite often in the text. So it's sort of sitting within the tradition, paying an homage to it, but also it's critical of a lot of what's going on around him at the time.
Mhm.
I don't know. You tell me, but does anything like this you've come across as well in the text, or things that might have been a bit surprising?
I think for me personally, the biggest surprise going through this text is even contains the it even contains Guizhitang. So for me, that's a
Mm,
huge surprise as a first formula, and also it contains like discussion about cold, damp, and also includes many Shang Han Lun formula. I think it contains 50, 60 of them
Oh
throughout
well,
the whole
actually,
text.
I looked at a paper, right? And they
Mhm.
say that it includes something like I think maybe like 107, something like that. So I think there's about 206 or 208 formula in the Wen Bing Tiao Bian. Either
Wow.
107 Shanghan or Jingui exact, maybe 30 exact formulas, and the rest are derivatives of the Shanghan
mm,
Jingui. So nearly
Mm,
over half the formula in the text are either from the Shanghan Jingui or
mhm.
modifications of it.
Yeah.
So nearly over half the text of it. So when you think about like that, to me, it's like, okay, well, I even if I ignore things like maybe like In Shao San, Sung Ju In, those other kind of more heat ones, I can still understand maybe different ways I can apply the Jing Feng that I'm already using as well. With all the modified variations of the formulas, or even how they use the exact formula as well. I found that really interesting. I didn't realize it was that high of a number.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
And
mm,
I want to say one of the reasons why I kind of like, I did a little bit, I translated one or two passages of it myself before Alan did it, before I realized that Alan would be better at it than I would, because it's a difficult text, is that when Alan said it's like one of the four kind of classics of Chinese medicine, what really stands out to me that is that like, when were the other three classics written? Nearly like 1800 to
mm,
2000 years ago. This is the only text in the last 200 years that a lot of Chinese scholars like put on the pedestal with the other classics. Like
mm,
that is a crazy thing to me, that people out there are saying, "Hey, this text is like, I'm going to put this with the Han Dynasty classics. This modern
mm,
Qing Dynasty, well, relatively modern Qing Dynasty text." Like that just that is such an anomaly in Chinese medicine,
mm.
to
Yeah.
at least from my perspective. And then the amount of commentaries and writings about it as well. Out of all the texts, um, especially modern texts, it's the only one to rival the Shang Han Lun in terms of
Mm,
that additional writings and commentaries. So my perspective is that generally when I look at Chinese medicine, I look at the people and I think, oh, I'm reading this person. He seems smart. What is he writing about? What is he looking at? And when people keep reading and writing about the same thing, it always tells me that, hey, I should probably look at this thing and focus on this thing if all these smart people are paying attention to it, you know?
mm.
mm,
Um,
And let me just add on one more to that. It's like we say they are the four greatest writing in the Chinese medical literature. So we had the inner canon, we had the canon
the
of
Neijing, yeah.
difficult issues, and
Nanjing.
also we have Shang Han Lun, the treatise on cold damage, and also Wen Bing Tiao Bian, uh, a systematic differentiation of warm disease. So one of the commonality among four of them is that each one of them provides a framework. So, for example, in the Neijing, you had the basic framework of channel systems and also how they connect to organ system. So basically, it's a merging between those two systems together in the Neijing that make it almost like eternal for the entirety of Chinese uh, medical history. And Nanjing provides a more, so you look at the world through the point of view of five phases. Five phases, five evil, five winds, and this and that. And how to deal with that from the point of view from five phases. So that's another framework. And Shang Han Lun, well, it goes through the whole thing with six channels, six stages, or however we want to translate that gene. That's a never-ending debate for the last 1,000 years or so. Anyway, we're not going there. And warm disease, then you have the four level, the Wei Qing Yin from Ye Tianshi, and also you have the three triple burner, which I kind of
Mm.
see as a bracket
That's
together.
that's
So
something I feel we need to get into more because that's
yeah,
what people think of when they think of this text. So anyway,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
something.
it's a
Yeah,
completely new framework that
yeah,
came up by Ye Tianshi, and Wu Zhitong just kind of put it in a very nice package.
mm,
One of the really cool things Wu Zhitong did that I did not realize until the very end of that translation, until I was all burned out, is that a lot of his formula came from Ye Tianshi's actual case.
Hmm.
mm.
So basically,
Oh,
it's not like someone just look at the old formula and just like do some cute stuff to it, and or based on the doctrine like the mean dynasty ideas, they just come up with this like ideas, abstract concept, and they create a formula. But in this case, it's like actual battle tested formula.
Mm.
the only thing I
So
would say is that, like, I think Ye Tianxue, well, I would argue that Yu Jiayan or Yu Cheng also heavily influenced the triple burner
yeah,
idea that
mhm,
that came
yeah,
into Wu Zhitong. And even like you say, Ye Tianxue's cases, Wu Zhitong also used some of Yu Jiayan's or Yu Cheng's cases as well. Not as
yeah,
many, not nearly as many, but he also took some cases from him as well.
mhm.
So it's crazy to see how he kind of like, but that was the idea, to kind of like bring these cases and systemize it so they can be reused and understood better.
So how was
Yeah.
it? How do you think he systematized it? Because they systematized it because he's taking ideas from all these different people.
Mm.
Um, how do you feel he was able to sort of bring them all together into this sort of neat little package to yeah.
So, if I had to guess, I would say his main framework is probably like Michael said, is heavily influenced by Yu Chang, Yu Jiayan, and also from Ye Tianzi. So it's very interesting. So Ye Tianzi give you Wei Qing Xue. So it's almost like from the four different anatomical level, from the exterior to interior. And also, he taking another idea from Wu Youke. So he wrote a work called Treatise on Epidemics. So basically, he argues that the disease coming from the mouth, from
Mm.
the nose and mouth, rather
Mhm.
from the skin. So, and also Yetian also talk a little bit about that. So from that, he said the beginning of transmission start from here, from the top. And then he added in Yetian so create this whole almost like you had a vertical route of the triple burners, and also you had the horizontal route or like a depth route from the Wei into that. So once he had this like framework, almost like a three-dimensional network out, I think the next step he would do is that then he look into all the different warm disease literature or basically previously just kind of scattered everywhere. Then he just kind of put each one of them into a different um, category or basket. And then after that, he just kind of analyzed through it and it's just merged it into one thing. And I think that's a really good approach, almost as a compilation. But I think the main the main philosophy is actually still from Ye Tianshi. And also later, people did debate later on, say, does this route actually make sense or not? Um, and so based on Ye Tian's, so I think that can be left up to clinicians and later scholar to debate. But I think that's one of the biggest contribution he did as he put together all this framework for people to at least study. So basically, when you say when you look at this, you say, okay, that's weight level. That's in the upper burner. Those are all the resources available to you. How do you
Mm.
deal with that? And then you differentiate to, oh, is it more so like lung? Is it in the heart? Or is it? So I think that's and also which of the six qi are affected? Is it cold? Is it warmth? Is it dampness? Is it dryness? Which one is it? So I think that's a really cool like three-dimensional or four-dimensional like framework that he provides.
To
And
to what extent do you think it was kind of like a new set of glasses to look at old ideas, or to what extent do you think it was a real evolution and something new?
I think the biggest new thing he did was basically he just brought in Yetian
Mm,
ideas. I think that's the
mm,
biggest, possibly you can argue most reliable thing.
mm,
As for the three burners, personally, I'm a little bit questionable. I feel a little bit questionable, but I do think it's a very easy way for people to study. It's very effective. And also it tells you where can the disease progress in the
mm,
body. So, and also which sequence it likely goes, because in some way it kind of mirrors the six stages in a way. So,
mm.
um,
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Like it seems to me like a lot of it is like a new way of framing ideas that have been around for a long
mhm,
time. I
yeah.
haven't sat with the text long enough to know how much of it is like a true innovation and how much of it is just like a reframing, if that makes sense.
Mhm, yeah.
I, I think I would say it's kind of like I don't know, it's almost like it's both because
Mm,
even like in the way that he writes, and I think Alan and I both felt this when we were working on the translation was that there's so much context in like each line with the history of the authors that he's referencing and things like
mm,
that. Even in I think it's maybe the third line, like he talks like I think he has something like he talks about it in Chinese, and I apologize for my pronunciation, but it's like he goes like something like Wen Bing Wei Bing, like the like Wei
mm.
Bing is exactly from the
Yeah.
Shang Han Lun style
Yeah.
of Chinese phrasing. So he's kind of using that style of phrasing, and then he references both like what you might call a moderate or a slack, a Huan Mai and a Jin Mai. And like you have to have read the Shang Han Lun to know that's kind of referencing lines 2 and 3 of that. And then he says, well, no, it can't be either of those pulses. It has to be like a strong pulse on the Chun position as well. So there's like
Mhm.
all these kinds of hidden references to these texts that you have to pay attention to throughout. That you need to kind of have a good understanding of Chinese medicine. You can still understand it, but you'll get a lot more out of it if you have a really good understanding of the texts that precede it as well, and kind of see how it kind of subtly pays differences because that's what he's trying to say is when it's not if you see this it might look like that but if it doesn't have this pulse then it's going to actually be like a warm disease or something like that.
Mm.
Mhm.
So it's very very interesting and cool.
Yeah, one of the things that I was really in admiration of you guys for is delving into the whole Wu Yun Liu Qi sections,
Oh God.
which is
Don't use we for that was
okay.
Alan.
That's a
I
huge
saw
rabbit
that and I
hole.
and I and I walked right out.
Because I've dipped my toe in that water a little bit, and it's a rabbit hole, and a minefield, and all of that. And I was like, oh my God, he's done a lot of work for this.
Well, we had some
So
debates on how
yeah,
to present the information in the introduction about
mm,
the readability, how to like outline the information because like we were trying to figure out the best way for it to make sense to people and it was like, well, we can do it like this and it makes sense this way, but then it loses context. But if we do it like this, then that is how it's supposed to be, I think, in the text or by the years, but then it doesn't might make not sense because it varies between the elements and what it's representing. But do you remember when we were talking about that? I think it was like the definitions from the Showen Jiezo
Oh
or something
yeah.
like that for
Like
the
how the I think it's the heavenly branches, how they
yeah.
correspond to the five phases versus the five movement because they are different.
Yeah,
mm.
yeah. Oh, that was rough.
I
Um,
think you guys did a really good job because it's a different it's different to what's out there. It's another way of looking at it. What I really appreciated was all those tables listing um, the flavors and the various what is it, the climatic
Yep.
factors and all of that, and linking them up
Mm,
quite clearly. Because when you're reading it in the other texts I've read and in its original, it's a lot of information, all out of
yep.
context. There are no nice tables.
Hmm.
So at least provides a clearer way for people to sort of see it and from a different and I certainly did when I see it. It's clear, like it's much clearer. So you
Yeah.
guys did a really great job on that, I thought. And it pops up throughout. That's the thing. It does pop up throughout the text
Hmm.
over and over again,
The
right?
interesting
Yeah.
thing about that is that like when he uses those flavor profiles to treat, right? He's using it in a Sanjiao 4-level system, but the flavor profiles relate actually to the Liu Jing, the six divisions, so he's kind of like already like integrating the kind of the six channels or six divisions into that with his flavor profiles.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's just an interesting way of like how he's already kind of bringing those ideas in.
Yeah. It's because originally I didn't even want to touch it because as all of us know is like 560 is like the biggest landmine ever.
Yeah.
It's the most confusing, most esoteric.
Mm.
Like because when you talk about 560, it's like everything is 560, like five
Mm.
phases, the 560, the six channels, and everything. And they have all this like interaction, the synergy, and all that stuff. So, oh, and it's painful. But
Mm.
as we read through the text, we're just like, oh, okay. If he actually clearly notes the flavor profile for every single formula, if we don't provide that context, like readers will never get it. And we just saw it right in front of us. It's like, oh God, okay.
I think that's really important in you're talking about your translation methodology before. It's easy to do just a straight translation. And if you had
Mm,
done a straight translation, none of this would be explained to people. And just to be aware that that's going on is something, like there's this whole other level to his writing and thinking that would get missed if you had just done those kinds of straight literal
Well,
mm,
translations.
well, what's
Yeah.
interesting, I think, is that like that idea of what he's using is actually I believe like probably the first person was Chong Wu-ji who tried to do that for the Shang Han Lun, use these kind of like flavor profiles from the like six chi and things like that to explain the Shang Han Lun formula. So then he's kind of Wu Jutong has adopted the same framework that's been used for the Shang Han Lun, but to try and come up with new formulas or to apply them to Ye Tianxue's cases to adopt like a framework or something like that. So if you're using already understanding flavors and how you apply them in clinic, then once again, you can kind of see how these formulas from the Wen Bing Tiao Bian supplement what might be missing in the Shang Han Lun as well in terms of
mhm,
flavors and temperatures as well.
mhm.
Mm.
Yeah,
So yeah.
ideally you should have both like Chen Wuji works and Wen Bin Tiao work together to solve all the issue. I think that's a belief system for Wen Bin masters, because I think the biggest debate between code image and Wen Bin people are basically it's just this one thing. Because Nanjing question 58 says Wenbin is part of the Shanghai disease. So it says there are five types of cold damage disease. And there's a wind strike, cold damage, worm disease, dryness, and something. So there are five of them. So they just like for the last 2,000 years, everyone's just like, oh yeah, worm disease is just part of the cold damage disease. And but ever since like Sun Simiao actually wrote quite a bit about worm disease, and then Pang Anshi wrote even more about it. And even so, basically by the 11th century, people say, okay, there are definitely two types of disease, but cold damage people say no, there's only one type. Everything is cold damage, and you can treat it with like cold damage formula. And but when being just like no, we're different, we're a different one. So that's the biggest debate. So I think that's what the Wu Xutong wanted to establish in this work. So I think one thing that's kind of beautifully uh, one beautiful construct he provides that cold damage would damage the opposite nature in the body, which is so cold damage yang. So cold damage will enter through Taiyang from the bottom. And and so Wen Bing, if that's a system we're going, then Wen Bing would damage the opposite nature in the body, which is tying from the hand from the top. So basically, you have two different things going into the body from different route of transmission. So one he argues will go through Wei Qingxie and also through three burners, and the other so it's a vertical down, so up and down. That's a Wen Bing disease, a worm disease, and cold damage in opposition would be actually you go through from the bottom and goes from the exterior into the interior. So basically he wants to say they are distinctly two different things. And this is actually what I've learned from Dr. Wei Yang, which I always find to be very beautiful. Because in cold damage tradition, there's this never-ending debate as to, okay, supposedly we interpret the 六经 as the six channels. Is it only a leg channel, foot channel, or is it foot plus hand channels? So people have this debate forever. And early on, they only say it's only a leg channel. But later on, I think Zhang Junior say no, it's actually two. But in this case, Wu Zhidong say no, it's only a leg because the hands are for the Wen Bing, which I find to be very
no. But
interesting.
do you remember we had that debate about the translation of that passage?
Yeah.
He does say it's like the leg, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't not involve the hands,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
It's not exclusive.
yeah, so it is like primarily the leg, but we were
Mhm.
debating this passage, but he does say like just because it's the leg doesn't mean that it won't involve the hand channel as well, something
Yep.
like that. So he's a little
Yep.
bit more in the middle.
Moderate.
Yeah.
Moderate.
And this idea you're discussing, because he does mention in one passage, and you talked about it, this idea of cold damage being horizontal and warm disease being vertical in
Vertical.
nature. I think you mentioned it as well, but kind of, so
Yep.
that idea relates to all of this with things coming in from the top and down and things coming in from the outside and in from the cold. This is the same idea in a different kind of phrasing. Yeah. Okay. It's very interesting. I'm wondering if you got in touch with, because you mentioned in Taiwan there are many Wen Bing masters and it's such a popular thing. And I know you're Taiwanese. Did you get in touch with any of these people to help you understand some of these ideas or translations, or any teachers of your own who kind of influenced your thinking on this?
Unfortunately, no.
We use mostly
Okay.
books, right?
Yeah,
Fang Yao Zhong.
Yeah, Fang Yaozong. I rely
And
on
there was one other one, right? But I can't remember the title of it. I just remember it was like the new commentaries or something like that, right? The Shinju and something like that.
Yeah, so I use primarily three works to help with my translation. So first, the biggest one is Fang Yaozong because he's like he and his wife are basically the Wen Bing authority. So you have to study under their interpretation. And also the other one is uh, basically someone did a full work and just collected different commentaries, historic pre-1900 commentaries of the Wen Bing Tiao Bian. So you have quite I think two, three works of Wang Shixiong. Uh, he wrote two books on Wen Bing, and
Chopping Nan
also
in there as well? Or did
I am not sure. The other one I looked into was Ye Ling. So Ye Ziyu or Ye Ling, he wrote a lot of criticism about the Wen Bing Tiao Bian. So basically someone already did all the footwork for us. So we just kind of refer to those both historical commentary and also the two modern authority figure in teaching Wen Bing, because I think the notion about like Wen Bing being the mainstream practice, I only hear it from my colleagues in Taiwan, uh, and they complain about it because they are more like a Jingfang practitioner. So it's like, oh, we have to go to the school and study all these years of worm disease, and turns out kind of useless in Taiwan. And well, they in their argument they believe it's not as useful as a Jingfang practice. So that's what I heard. And I did not consult them during the translation because even though I'm Taiwanese, I haven't really got a chance to go back to Taiwan. And I left Taiwan almost 24 years ago. So I don't really have much root there.
Mm,
And so, yeah. And also, ever since I started this project, I think I only been back to Taiwan once. So,
mm. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
I
Well,
wish
that's
I could
that's when we caught
study
up,
there
wasn't
more.
it? Or was that
Huh?
before? I can't remember when we caught up in Taiwan. Have we
Yeah,
started that yet? That
yeah,
was
that's a
last year.
one time I went back to Taiwan since COVID.
Yeah.
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 We finally met after working together for 5 or 6 years.
Oh, very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Very
finally
nice.
met in person last year?
Yeah,
I think it's last
last
year.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, very nice. The other thing I really liked in the book was this bit at the beginning where you went into the ideas of Ti and Yong and gave a little sort of I don't know explanation of that. I've never seen that in a textual form. I've done my own little research into it, but it was really great to see because
Mhm.
they're important ideas probably in medicine from like you were saying Judanshi and stuff like this, or like
Mhm.
they start to arise and and yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about this idea of Ti and Yong and how they how you found it in the text, like what how it sort of comes up in the Wu Jutong's work.
Well, we had a pretty
Uh,
interesting discussion about this and about that preface as well. When we were trying to like figure out what to write about it, because Wu Zhetong wrote another book. What is it? Remediating the faults of physicians or something, the Yi Bing Shu, right?
Yi Binsu, yeah.
How do you what was the translate something?
Remedying the medical practitioner's fault.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And he actually writes an essay in there about the Tian Yong of the Zhongfu, I think, and it kind of talks a little bit about his opinion, but he mentions it throughout the text as well, right? Where it's still, I don't know, it's still kind of like a little bit confusing to me sometimes. But I think it basically is saying that like the function of the organ is is often opposite to its nature of what it should be, right? So if the stomach is young, it actually has a yin function of descending.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I think
so his body is young, but his function is yin.
yeah. So yeah, it's so when I
We're
first
getting him stressed out
when I
now.
started going through it,
I
the
wasn't
kind
intending
is
it.
yeah. So when I first working on it, for me it's because I kind of know this because as a Buddhist person, it kind of makes sense to me already. I thought it's like a commonly shared knowledge, like everyone knows this. So when you know T, Yong is like the opposite.
Mm,
That's why how I understood it. But then Michael looked at it as like, why is that? And I was like, oh crap, I guess other people may not know this. So then I wrote down this like massive footnote. But then I realized I need to write out a massive footnote every single time.
mm,
And then and each time is slightly different because sometimes I need to talk about, okay, there's something almost like a, how do I say it? It's almost like the Buddhist concept of Dharma body. So basically, it's a nature, the nature, but it's not in the manifestation. It's a nature of thing, the innate property, the nature of things, but it's not in manifestation. And Jung is like how it manifests into the world.
I think one of the good simple ways of explaining it is the T. If the T is an ear, listening is the Yong, right? That's
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of the way they
yeah.
use to explain it. That's something I think people can grasp onto at least and start to get an idea of.
Yeah,
If the T
so
is your mouth, speaking or eating is the Yong.
yeah,
It's,
so
yeah,
yeah, that's one of the. It's not everything though, because that only
it's
speak
not
about the
everything.
yeah, it's
Well,
only the
because you're using
instrument
yin
and
and
also
yang in
the
the body,
function,
right?
Yeah,
but there's
yeah,
more to it,
yeah, yeah.
and and so because of that, I was just like, oh, I need to write something to at least give people this framework to refer back to whenever they run into throughout the text, and that's why we decided to do it. And as I went through it, I was like, wow, there are a lot of debates on that, and
Mm,
there are even debates who came up with it. So
mm,
people was like, so
Well,
Dao
you
say
linked
Dao's
it
had
back
it.
very far. You linked it back
yeah,
to the I Ching, didn't you? Which I was
yeah.
surprised because, like, how do you say? It's kind of like it's not there, but the essence of the idea is there, which is probably, how Chinese people sometimes the authors want to do if they want to make their idea sound more legitimate. They're like, well, this is the essence of the idea, but the first time that it's written about is actually quite a bit later.
Yeah, Okay, they just say the words were there.
Yeah,
Mm,
there we go.
Then it was redefined later.
mm,
After the Buddhists did all the whole work, after Nagarjuna did all the work, and then they used the same model to uh, and retroactively apply to the very early literature. It's like, hey, we had it first. But my argument is like, yes, the words, the characters were there,
mm,
but originally it didn't mean that.
mm.
But that's my personal take. I
Can
think you
I
can
ask?
write a PhD thesis
Oh,
on this one because this is complicated.
yeah, it's complicated. I'm wondering as well. This is probably throwing another spanner in the works. But the Fuxingjue also uses these words,
Oh my God, let's not go there.
which okay, we don't need to. It seems like
Well,
an
no, look,
anomaly.
it's an interesting thing.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what
复兴觉
got me as well because I don't actually see those terms really show up until maybe like Xiao Yong probably uses
yeah,
it, like in like 10th or
Yeah,
11th century or 9th
yeah,
century, something like that, right?
yes.
mhm.
So, the Fuxing Dre is an interesting one, and uh it's a tough one. There's a couple of things at least I find interesting about one is that the first interesting thing is that it has pericardium pathology, which is not evident in very many early texts at all. It's not in Sun Tzu
Mm,
Miao. It's not. I don't. Which is interesting as well. Um.
it shows up in
So
天会
sorry.
pericardium shows up in 天会
Is
so
in there? Is it?
yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
one of the biggest discovery from the 天会
But
excavation.
is there heart and pericardium both in there at the same time, or just one or the other? Because that's the thing about the
Both.
Fuxing Dre. It has both. Okay. Well, that's an
Yeah,
interesting take.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. 天会 tax is very very interesting because I mean that among all the things, that's one of the really interesting thing because we always like wonder is like where did the pericardium or heart governor came from?
Hmm.
And so before that, everyone say the Lin Su author added it.
Hmm.
And but after the Tianwei test came out, I saw that Xinbao Mai was there. I was like, oh my God. So it was there already. So yeah, I uh, mistakenly accused the author of Lin Shu for adding that one.
Well,
Tell
that's
you one interesting thing, though, also that I hope people might do some research into, if regards to the Fuxing Dui, is a text called Wuxing Dai, which is very, very not well known text about the five phases. I think written maybe about 4th century. It's in what's that? I think yeah, I'm not sure, but it's written very, very early on as well, and I think it would be interesting to see there's some correlations between the Fuxing Dui and that text as well, because it's all based about 5 phases. But
mm,
anyway, that's beyond the time that I have.
yeah. Well, anyway, guys, you've done such a great job on this text, and I think it's a real boon to the profession. And you put in so much hard work, and there's a part two in the works. Is that correct?
Eventually.
Uh, eventually, we'll get to it.
Eventually, you'll get to that. Okay.
We need some maybe well we got to Alan has done his part for the Psalm text. I need to finish that, but I'm working on some coursework right now, so I'm
Mm.
got that on the back burner. But that'll be the next one that we finish up.
I think you guys need
Um
Yeah.
a holiday after this.
I
uh
really need a holiday right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to be honest, like I can't like working with Alan, uh, it is such a it's hard work, but it is also such a pleasure to be able to have someone to discuss this with and work on these topics with, because he really like looking at the preface and the introduction that he did. There's nothing close to that in Chinese editions. So even myself, when I
Mm.
get to work on it, I get so much out of it as well. It is just amazing that we have this kind of level of translations available in the West. And I really hope that people out there will appreciate it and give it a good read. And one of the things I think with Chinese medicine texts is that you just can't, you really can't just read them once. You have to go back, and even like the Shang Han Lun, the Neijing, anyone who's read those texts and practices them will tell you that you have to read them multiple times because each time you read it and you think, oh, this might reference this line or this might reference that line, or you start to see this kind of web and network of ideas that are referencing each other because the brains of these people who wrote them just must have been crazy to have these webs of knowledge in there.
Yeah, and especially for Wu Jutong because he was special. It's almost like Sun Simiao because Sun Simiao is his tech is special because he has access to Imperial Library, and Wu Jutong at the time he worked as a copyist for the Siku Quansu. So that's like a Qing Imperial Library organization
Well,
process.
it
So
has over
during
like
which he
10,000 books or something, some
yeah, something like
crazy.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during which basically he probably had access to all the medical work available to him at this time. So that's why he was able to see and learn from so many different sources. And yeah, so when I first began this work, I thought I just, oh yeah, it's a short work. I just worked on in no time. Oh yeah. So in the end, I had to read like 60, 70 books because he has so many references. And so I need to read the text and make sure his argument is sound. And in some case, he actually made mistakes quoting people, misquoting them, and also made wrong assumption about people, or copy the wrong formula in I think in one or two cases.
Well, he did the
So
wrong Wu Yu Ko formula, I think, is like one of his Da Bu Yuan Chai or something like that. One of the Chai formulas, something like that. You couldn't find that one, or we couldn't find that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also I think he attacked Wu Youke a few times,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
but then he attacked him, and but then I looked into Wu Youke formula, I was like, that's not what Wu Youke meant, and also that's the wrong formula. And I was just like,
But
there's
even
a
when
lot
he
of
when
that
even when
works.
he kind of like he still, how do you say? I think he attacks people, but at the same time he'll kind of praise what they did well. So
Yep,
he's
yep.
like
He's pretty fair.
ignore this junk, but he did this really,
Mhm.
really well. So we'll
Yeah,
we'll use that from him. So it's kind of like it's interesting to see that he kind of has these both. He's willing to badmouth someone, but at the same time get their good parts. And that's kind of what I think he basically said is that like I tried to get all the good stuff from the old people and get rid of the rest, and I hope that someone will do that to me as well. Is basically what he says. I hope that someone
yeah.
will come in by and criticize and attack my work as well. Because at least one thing that I think at least in Chinese medicine is that you're not really anybody until someone's at least talks some shit about you. About what you're trying to do.
And
Uh,
and as a later author, the best way to make a name of yourself is to attack the predecessor who are established. And you always win. Later people always win because they are dead.
uh,
They cannot respond to you.
uh,
Oh, well, on that note, guys, I'd like to say thank you for taking your time to join me today to help talk about this book and help sort of get word out about it because I think it's really fantastic and a really great insight into Chinese medical history that hasn't had much of a light on it. There we go. Michael's holding it up there. Um, yeah, and thanks. And I'm looking forward to part two.
Yeah,
eventually,
hopefully soon.
Yeah, good stuff.
yeah. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for having us, Daniel.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Thank
And
you for having me.
just if you guys don't know, this podcast is an arm of the Purple Cloud Press, who publish our book as well. So,
Yes.
we
So it's on our website
yep,
for order.
yep.
Anyone who wants to do that, yeah.
And
And both Michael and Alan are doing some teaching. Michael through his own institute,
the Academy of Source-Based Medicine,
Academy of
ASBM. Yep.
Sorts-Based Medicine, and Alan through, is it the DAOM?
So
DOAM, sorry.
so I teach at ACCHS and also Yosan University. And
The DAO
recently
is a
I've been
program, is it?
hmm?
The
Yeah,
DOAM is a
supposedly are
program.
DOM programs.
Mm.
And recently I've been collaborating with Quali Earth. So I think they want me to lecture once a year or something. So,
Yeah.
so hopefully every year I'll put out something very interesting. So on the last time we talked about Tianhui text,
Very
that
interesting.
contains lineage and concept from the historical Binche lineage,
Mm.
which I find to be fascinating.
Mm.
Mm.
It's a whole other topic, so we might have to have you back on to talk about that sometime.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks again, guys, and yeah, we'll chat soon.
Thank you very much,
Mhm.
Daniel.
See
Thank
you
you,
later.
Alan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.